Great. So for this section here, we just wanted to highlight kind of some more specifics on the different aspects that you could focus on when you're trying to improve your organic search visibility. So we're going to touch on a lot of these as we progress throughout the presentation. We did also include just a couple checklists up front. These will be really good for everybody to run through just when we'll explain kind of all of these different checkpoints here in a little more detail. But these are some of the basics that you'll want to have implemented on your website. And we'll continue to cover these throughout the presentation. And then Google business page as well. We also have a little checklist here on different things you're going to want to double check and make sure you have implemented for each of your locations and your Google business page. So to get into some of the tactics now. So the first thing we wanted to bring up, then this could be one of the quickest things you can do that still has a really big impact for SEO, is looking at your title tag and your meta description on all of your important pages. So I'm going to show quickly what these are in a Google search here. So when somebody types in really any location and a bank they're looking for, a lot of times you'll get this map listing up front. We're going to touch on this a little bit later on how you actually get your bank featured here. But what you'll also see is just kind of those standard organic listings. So the title tag is this headline essentially, and then the meta description is the copy that shows up underneath. So this is essentially ad copy that's going to help kind of get someone when they make the search, decide who they're actually going to click on. So it's one thing to actually get onto the first page, but then you really want to think about making sure you're actually writing something in both of these tags for each page, since Google is going to show that copy. That's really going to be how someone decides which bank they're going to click on. So, so basically what you want to do is there's a few things for each of your service pages or location pages. You just want to start to think about like what keyword would somebody search, and then just make sure at the very least you have that in those tags. That's going to be one of the big ways Google determines if your page is relevant for the keyword. They really want to see that in the copy, but it also helps users actually click on it when you do get on the first page. So there's some character limits as well to each of the tags, so we've included those there. But really, this is one of the few things, it doesn't take that much time to do, but can have a really big impact. So in this slide, what we're looking at is some of the data for one of the clients that we've implemented this for. So the number is basically where they were ranking on Google. So 87 would be around page 8 or 9. Right around October, November, all we did was adjust the title tag and the meta description, and we immediately got onto page 3. And then another month after that, we started getting onto page 1, and now it's slowly been moving up each month from there. So it's one of those things, it doesn't take a lot of time to do, but it's really important to make sure you have that implemented on really all your core pages that you want to show up in search. Some other factors too, that's probably the most important one, but there are things like the headings on your page are really important, your URL. So in this case, your URL is going to be kind of what shows up in this browser here. So you're going to want to make sure that kind of makes sense, the copy you have there. Sometimes what will happen is it'll just be numbers, or it won't really mean anything. So you really want, because people do scan the URLs to see if the page is going to be relevant to what they're looking for. So you always want to make sure that actually includes words and not just numbers, or so it makes sense for people when they see it. And then images as well. So images are going to help keep people on the page, but search engines also look at those as well when they're evaluating your page. And then just the final piece to think about is how fast your web page load. So page load speeds are a really important part of SEO as well. There's a couple of reasons. Google really wants the experience to be good of every website that it shows highly. So if your page takes a while to load, a lot of times people will leave the page before it even finishes loading, and they'll go to kind of the next listing. So really important just to keep people on your page when they do try to click on it. We have a free tool here that we'll be able to give you guys. It's a tool from Google where you could scan any page on your website, and Google will tell you if you're kind of below their benchmarks that they want to see. And it'll actually give you a list of recommendations as well. And you could send that over to a developer and see what could be cleaned up if you're not seeing your page load times as well as you'd like to. So those are just some kind of on-page SEO tactics. And again, what those do will help you show up in this section, kind of these text listings that you see on the bottom here. To Jeff's point earlier as well, if we look at this result, a lot of times you'll also see ads in the search results as well. So this first listing here is actually a text ad that you'd have to pay for on Google. Then you'll also see ads even in the map listings now. So this one that says sponsored is actually an ad that we're paying for here. And then you get to the organic listing. So kind of like what we're talking about with search engine marketing, there's the SEO piece, which gets you to show up here, but then there's also ads and the map listing where you could really start to have multiple listings on the first page, which can really help kind of funnel users into your website. So ultimately, once you start implementing all of that and you're actually getting results and getting traffic, we did want to just put this in here to talk about Google Analytics. It's really important that, especially if you're making changes, that you could evaluate kind of what's happening and what's working. So making sure you have Google Analytics 4 set up is going to be very important. The older version of Google Analytics is going away in July. So if you don't have Google Analytics 4 set up yet, it's really a good time to do it. That way you have some historic data to look at. Google does have a free tool to help you get set up. I recommend starting with that to at least get kind of your basic tracking set up. Then it's always worth looking at and kind of doing some custom work to make sure you have forms and phone calls and all of that tracked as well. But this is coming up pretty quickly, so it's a really good time to start thinking about it. If you're not sure if you have it set up, if you use a tool like BuiltWith, which is a free tool, it'll essentially tell you what codes you have on your website, so you can quickly check and see if you have Google Analytics 4 set up yet. So then that was kind of the SEO piece and the analytics part. The local search part, which again, when we look at this result, is going to be this map listing. There's a few factors that go into actually getting your bank to show up here. So we're going to start to cover those, because anytime someone types in a location, typically this is going to be one of the first things they see. Gives them the option to request directions. Sometimes there's even a phone call button here as well. But the way you actually start showing up there, there's a few things. One of them is going to be citations, which is basically Google's way of looking through all the different directories that are out there, and they want to see your bank's information on all of those websites. What that does, it helps confirm to Google that your address is correct, your phone number is correct, that you're still operating. So if they see your locations on all these different directory websites, it just reinforces that you're a good result and that you're in that area. And the way you improve that is through something like list management, where you're actually going in and trying to claim directory profiles and just make sure your information is accurate on all of those. Really, the name, address, phone number, and hours are probably the most important things that you just want to make sure are correct. Sometimes if you move locations or your phone numbers change, you'll have directory listings that are inaccurate. So making sure all of that's cohesive and consistent is one of the main things that Google looks at to actually show your bank in that map listing. So there's a lot of benefits to getting featured there. It's one of the first things somebody sees, particularly on mobile as well. If somebody's on their phone and they're typing in bank near me or bank in one of your location areas, that's typically going to be the first thing they see. So you can typically drive a lot of traffic to the branches just by getting featured in that map listing. And then this is just an example of some of the directories that are out there. So obviously you have your social media profiles, you have Yelp, there's all sorts of business directories. Google Business, they have their own kind of directory system. That's a really important one to make sure you're on and your information is correct. But all of this is kind of what Google is looking at when they're trying to figure out which banks they should show in those map listings. And then this is just so your options to improve the directory listings. There's a lot of different software and tools you can use. Some pretty common ones are Yext, Brightlocal, Moz as well is another one. So really the difference here, we kind of group them in two categories. Yext is going to be a good way, a good automated method. So the information you put into Yext on your location and address will get pushed out to about 70 or 80 different directories that are in Yext network. The downside of it is when you stop your subscription, the information gets reverted back. So the ones on the right are better for kind of full control, where you'll have access to all the directories. You can edit the information at any time. It's a little more manual, a little more time consuming, but it does give you a little more control and a little more ownership of the directory profiles. So then that way, if anything changes, an address moves, you're easily able to update it. But we always recommend using one of these tools to clean up a lot of your listings that could be inaccurate.